Hello and welcome to Lesson 8 of ZEPETOR Class Retouching. My name is Mentor Val and I'll be teaching you how to draw eyes and eyebrows this time, just like the picture above. And I draw them from scratch. So this is part of a cosplay edit I'm working on, and I will show you how to draw hands later on in a separate video, along with noses. So first of all, I'll show you how I drew these eyes. I went back to my ZEPETO avatar layer to erase the whites of her eyes, the sclera, so that I could make a layer underneath and create my own. Sometimes I like to do gray sclera, slightly gray, or ivory colored sclera, but now I'm just doing plain white so you can see it better, as I will add some shading later. I'm fixing up the shape to make her eyes look more hooded, and then I'm going to make sure that I capture the essence of the slight peak of the corner of her eye. So there's a part of her eye that kind of sticks out, so her eyes look kind of more rectangular than my avatar's eyes. I also have to add the iris, and I do that by picking out the darkest color of blue, making sure that the irises are positioned correctly so that she's looking at the camera directly from a 3/4 angle. After that, I draw eyeliner on my avatar. I am going to use this eyeliner as a guide for my eyelashes later on. The eyeliner is just supposed to frame the eyes, so I make sure I get that correct or roughly correct eye shape. I also draw on her waterline too for both eyes. And of course, I am drawing the top line for the eyeliner, and I could use the force fade, so probably smooth in this case for an eyeliner brush. Since I want to match the character's eyeliner, I have to go back on my ZEPETO avatar layer to erase the original eyeliner that was provided. So all I do is just to go back to the skin layer, I color pick or select the part I want to remove with the skin color, and then I just airbrush it out, simply. So the eyeliner that the character has is not as winged, that's why I just make sure that the end is slightly sharp. And it's definitely a small detail, but I just don't want to go back in later because if you can fix a mistake now, why not fix it now? Next, I'm drawing eyeshadow. What I use for eyeshadow is usually my ZEPETO shading brush. It's a simple shading brush that's really versatile, so I try and match the color of the character's eyeshadow onto my avatar, and her eyeshadow noticeably goes all the way around her eye. Usually, for most characters, you would just need to use your soft brush on the top part of her eyelid. Once the base eyeshadow is done, we'll go in later with an ad brush to add some glitter. Next, let's do eye shading. The eye shading I usually go for is this kind of grayish coloration underneath, directly underneath her top eyelid. So what I do is I erase a part that's above the iris, and I keep the gray parts around the iris and framing the eye on the inside. So I just make sure that it's not too black, it's more like a grayish blue color, and I make sure that I use a soft brush also. Then I'm gonna go and draw some eyelashes. So I use an eyelash brush, and again with drawing eyelashes, I've said before, I don't like to draw in opposite directions most of the time, but in this case, I guess I'm gonna make a small exception because the character's eyelashes specifically look like this. Near the part where the eyelashes go in opposite directions, I make sure that the brush is kind of big in size. I'm gonna move on to the other eye and do the same thing here. The other eye has noticeably less eyelashes because there's a shadow cast, and there's no need to accentuate that much with detail over there. For bottom lashes, however, I don't make exceptions when I draw the lashes. I just draw them in one direction, which is outwardly curved strokes. I draw the lashes more short and thin, the inner I go in the eye. Now I'm going to fix up my longer lashes. You don't have to make longer lashes thicker necessarily if you don't want to, but longer lashes tend to look better thicker, whereas shorter ones look better thinner. I'm going to move on to eyebrows now. So you see me fixing up this shape, airbrushing the eyebrows out, and this might take a while because you need to make sure that the skin underneath is okay. I felt as though my skin was getting too patchy, so after some arduous trial and error, I finally realized that I think the best way to do it is to color pick the color of your eyelid, because the color is slightly darker there and not the color of your forehead, and then go in by airbrushing out the eyebrows using the eyelid color. You can definitely blend it with the color of your forehead, which is directly above it. And also you could use a wider brush size than what I'm using here, because usually wider brush sizes for smooth brushes like shading brushes, they work out because it blends really easily. Now let's move on to actually drawing the brows. So it also took a lot of trial and error to see which brow shape or brow brush I wanted to use. I had an eyebrow brush specifically for this, yet I had quite some difficulty trying to match the shape using this because I feel like that only works out for smoother brushes. I also tried a hairbrush, that didn't work out. I ended up using my dip pen. The shape of the eyebrow was definitely hard for me to achieve because her eyebrows, the character's eyebrows, have quite an interesting shape where it's heavier at the end near her nose, the inner end, but it's way lighter and straighter and it goes upwards. So I found this quite difficult to recreate, but I got there in the end with the left eye. How I did it was I just drew an angular line, so tilted downwards, quite straight. I first did that, and I didn't make any thickness variation or make any lines extra heavy. Later on, that's when I decided to add some thickness to the inner part of her eyebrow, the part nearer to her nose, just like the reference, and I think that looked a lot better than what I had originally drawn. As for the other eye, which is less exposed, I just drew a thinner line that kind of curved a little bit to show the curvature of her face. In the process of drawing this eyebrow, I just knew that it wasn't exactly correct or accurate to the reference, but I just kept drawing it anyways because I knew I could fix it later, such as erasing and using the lasso tool. It's totally okay because error carried forward is greatly rewarded if you just be patient and trust the process. I also fixed the left eyebrow by erasing a part to make it look sharper and straighter. I used my lasso tool for her right eyebrow to kind of drag it down a little bit and see approximately where it would look good. I just opted dragging it down slightly and then drawing a little line connecting it to her nose, just like in the reference. You can draw eyebrows in virtually any shape you want just using the method here, for example just using a dip pen or some soft pen, and then going in later with some kind of hairbrush, small hairbrush in a small size. I don't do the second step too often, admittedly, just because I think a hard eyebrow can look equally as effective as a soft one, especially if you're far away and you can't even see the individual hairs. So that's kind of what's happening with this edit. I feel like the viewer would be quite far away. And so all I'm doing is I'm enlarging the right eyebrow and fixing up the end of the eyebrow because I think it's a bit too pointy. You can see me constantly flipping back and forth, especially with eyebrows because, well, they're not meant to look symmetrical, but they're at least meant to look proportionate. Now that I'm happy with my eyebrows, I can finally move on to my iris and pupil. So for my iris, you've already kind of seen me do it before, but in less detail. So now I'm going to use a shading brush in add mode that is of the same shade of blue, if not slightly lighter. And then I'm just drawing a simple curve or a half circle in her eye. So I'm kind of getting this cerulean blue in add mode, and I think it's looking quite nice. It's adding some dimension to the eye, and you could actually stop here. You don't even need the pupil, but I'm just going to draw the whole thing just so you see how I draw eyes. I also don't really draw strokes in the iris that often, so I just ended up not doing that. And I also got my shading brush, and I use this for skin, eyeshadow, my iris, and everything. So I just got that, and I colored it white, and I put that in add mode to blend nicely with the rest of her eye, and I just dotted circles. So it looks like there's some light reflecting inside. As soon as that's done, I go back to my iris layer, just the one that's in normal mode and not add mode, and then I continue to draw with that shading brush. And I color it black so that I can make the pupil. Depending on how much space you have in the iris, that will determine how wide you should make your brush for your pupil. I don't have that much space, so my brush size in this case isn't too wide or big. But in any case, if a character is emoting, such as looking angry or scared, you don't want your pupils to look too big, because according to science, pupils dilate if you're feeling feelings of happiness. On the other hand, pupils constrict and get smaller if you're feeling negative emotions. Lastly, we have our final details. This includes shine on the eyeballs, and I'll definitely do that right now, where I just get a shading brush in add mode, and then I draw a simple line in a thin brush size. So then after I do that, I simply erase using a small eraser brush size, erase the middle parts of the line to make it look like there are lights shining. Here's a segment of me wondering why my blue in add mode was turning up green instead of a lighter blue, until I realized that I had this layer clipped onto my eyeshadow, which was wrong. I definitely should have unclipped that and then went on with the eyeshadow. You can now see the eyes in almost all their glory. My final detail is I'm going to be adding glitter onto this eyeshadow now. I have eyeshadow and glitter brushes to add glitter to areas around the eyeshadow, but you can definitely just use sputtering, a default brush, in a low brush size and achieve the same effect. I also like to have some sparkling details in the inner corner of your eyes just because that's the makeup trend nowadays. Also remember that all of this glitter must be done in add mode, just like the eyeshadow highlights that I just did previously. So that's about it with these eyes. I sincerely hope that this lecture helped you all understand how to draw eyes a little bit better at least, and also eyebrows too. This is not the end of week 3 lectures. We'll still be doing nose, lips, and hands, so stay tuned for those. Thank you and goodbye!